Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Laura Kunkel, America in Bloom's Executive Director. AIB is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. How exciting! AIB promotes and builds vibrant and sustainable communities through volunteerism and education, emphasizing flowers, plants, trees, heritage preservation, and environmental and lifestyle enhancements. We really envision communities across the country as the best examples of welcoming and vibrant places to live, work, and play. Through our programs, grant opportunities, online resources, and the sharing of best ideas from towns and cities across the country, we empower communities to beautify and improve the overall quality of life. Today's webinar is an example of the ways that America in Bloom shares information to help communities become more beautiful, more vibrant, and more sustainable. You can learn more about America in Bloom by visiting our website at americainbloom.org. A quick housekeeping note, if you have questions during the webinar, please put them in the Q&A section of your Zoom toolbar, which is likely at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer questions at the end. Please do not put questions in the chat function, just put them in the Q&A section. This webinar is being recorded. It will be posted on the AIB website later today and also posted on AIB's Facebook page. Today's webinar is entitled How to Start a 501c3 for Your Local In Bloom Program. We are joined by Craig Baldridge of Shawnee Hills, Ohio. You will hear the story of how Shawnee Hills Blooms became a reality and the lessons they learned along the way. We are so grateful to Craig for being with us today. Take it away.
Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My goal today is to help you become a 501c3. I'll start off by saying, as many of us have in the past, I'm not an attorney. What I'm sharing today is what we learned about 3.5 years ago when we became a 501c3. My goal is that we help you avoid the common pitfalls and time wasters that I've seen some other organizations go through. Several years ago, before we became the 501c3, I started looking around at some of the other Bloom's organizations in Ohio, and I was looking up their articles of incorporations to see what they had done. And one of the things I noticed was there were several of them that had filed their articles and then came back 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later and filed an amendment to their articles. And the amendments were including the 501c3 language that the IRS requires. So I started my journey by doing some webinars with SCORE, local for free consulting group that is in many of the cities across the nation. And it kind of summed up this slide, and I think we've all been there before. So why set up a nonprofit? And that was a question that in our first year of Shawnee Hills Blooms, we were asking, why is it so difficult to get funding? What is our focus? And went to my second Bloom symposium, talked to some other communities, and they shared with me their suggestion was become a 501c3. And as I started doing some research, these were the items that popped up regularly that are the reasons for doing it. The biggest for us was the credibility and the trust. You're building credibility within your community. The people that you're seeking funds from, you build trust with them. The secondary is the tax deduction. It creates a tax deduction for your donors, and that is something that really helps to move the needle. Limited liability. We don't think about it, but when you're starting a nonprofit, what you're really doing is you're starting a corporation. You're building a business. You're going to have a board of directors. And as we all know, that as soon as you get into a situation with a group of leaders, there's some liability that can come along with that. So protecting the founder's legality is a critical step in a function of what the nonprofit will help us do. Grants and funding. Many grants don't even consider you as a recipient or a qualified entity for their grants unless you're a 501c3. Tax exemption, that's just an obvious one. As soon as you become a 501c3, you are exempt from sales tax in your state. One of the things that took me a couple years to learn is the free and discounted services. Microsoft, for example, for the last 2 years, we've had Microsoft 365, the desktop version, for free. They just recently changed some of their rules, and now they're only allowing the online versions. But again, if you're a qualified 501c3 and you pass their tests, several organizations will allow you to have their software for a discount or for free. Continuity is something that we don't think about when we're starting an organization, but it really helps to focus us on what's the long-term plan. One of the aspects of your 501c3 filing is you have to account for what you're going to do in case of dissolution. Operational flexibility. So and I'll get into this in a little bit more here a little bit later, but is it a standalone or are you a part of the government of your community? Building a Bloom's organization, what to consider. We had to ask ourselves, what do we want to accomplish? And I would think many of you are doing the same. What is the organization's name? That might sound like a simple little a little item, but you put three people in a room, everybody's got a different idea of what a name should be, but it's really kind of critical because it's what has to go onto the legal paperwork, and it's what one of the beginning steps. As I mentioned a second ago, are you a government affiliated or are you a standalone organization? When we were doing it here in Shawnee Hills, we actually were talking with the local village administrator and weighing back and forth what were the pros and cons of becoming a part of the actual village government. And in the discussions, we determined that if we did it on our own, we don't have a lot of the red tape and the regulations then that the governments have to live with and have to deal with and stay within. So we chose to go as a standalone, allows us to do some things that the government entities have a little bit harder time getting done. You'll have to look at what your state's requirements are. I'm, again, not an attorney, so I don't know, but my guess is that each state is doing something similar to what Ohio has done. And you have to create your own articles of incorporation, which really become your blueprint for your new company. And we'll talk about here which IRS forms to apply. When you decide to do a 501c3, you have to file paperwork with the IRS. And it's a little daunting at the beginning because you're reading a 37-page document that has the instructions for what you need to do. But really, it's not as overwhelming as it seems at the very beginning. But one of the early discussions or decisions you'll have to make is which form do we actually use? And one of the things that in Ohio, and I would imagine this is the case with other states, Ohio's articles, in order to form the corporation, you have to have boards of directors. And so if you're in the early stages, trying to figure out, okay, how many do we need, which will be dictated probably by the state, and who do you want to approach? Those are all things that you need to start thinking about. All these six things are things you need to start thinking about at the very beginning before you can start doing the 501c3 application. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the business plan because again, that's what you're doing is you're setting up a brand new business. And it'd be a good idea to create an executive summary. about what your organization is, what you want to accomplish, how you're going to accomplish things. Because as you start the process of going out and talking to businesses, seeking funds, uh, looking for grant opportunities, it's nice to have a summary of what your organization is doing and is going to do. You got to think a little bit about marketing. Plan on how are you going to get the message out. Even though we're a nonprofit organization, we do have a goal and we do have ideas of what we want to accomplish. Well, in order to do that, you really have to sell other people on your ideas and on supporting you so that you can accomplish them. Ask yourself, what are some of the outcomes that you would like to have? Is there a park in town that's kind of dilapidated and you want to fix it? Are there no flowers in the village and you want to do a better job with that? Start coming up with your lists at the very beginning and asking everybody that is involved with you, let's come up with a list of things what's our wish list? What would we like to do? Fundraising plan. It was Our first year was a lot of anguish. We were trying to figure out how are we going to raise money. We are we're an unknown entity. We didn't have a track record yet, and we're out there banging on doors, the same doors that the chamber and that every other organization and nonprofit is banging on. And how do we set ourselves up ahead of them or in addition to them? And one of the things that became obvious is as I was knocking on business doors, one of the businesses said to me, "Well, why aren't you using the TIF funds?" And I looked at her and said, "TIF funds?" And she explains to me that her business paid money into a TIF fund to help fund some of the beautification of the village. And I sat down with some of the village leaders one day at lunch and I'm telling them this story of Virginia telling me to ask about the TIF funds, and they both looked at each other like, why didn't we think of that? So there's some things some avenues that you may not be aware of that are out there that can help raise money or raise the funding and give you the funding you need to accomplish your goals. Plan on creating the board. You're going to need a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Who's going to do that? What are their functions? Have those spelled out so that everybody knows who is doing what. When I mentioned as during the outcomes, I was talking about what everybody would like to do. It's kind of what the needs assessment gets into. What is it that needs to be done in the village or your community that you're building your Bloom Sport program for? And I'm sure the administrator and the mayor and the council all have a list of what would we like to see done someday. And it's amazing how many of those items can be accomplished by a Bloom's organization. Are you going to create any programs for your community? We created a fall winter education series. We meet six times in the fall and winter and have different speakers coming in and talk to the community, making presentations. This recently, we had a presentation on Dark Sky, Ohio. We've had folks come in and talk about different organic fertilizing methods. We've had people explain to us how to the correct way for potting plants, how to prune plants, and just a number of things that fit into an education program for people in our community. The financial plan, again, is one of those things that we hate doing it, but you got to have some kind of an idea of what you're going to spend money on and how you're going to bring that money in. Organization and management, who's going to do what? We've got some really handy people that are great with the flowers and they love getting that stuff done. They're the ones that ended up becoming the leaders of our flower committee. And then as you're doing things, you're going to want to start a list of your accomplishments. Those are the kind of things that everybody's happy to do and glad it was done, but are you keeping a track of that? Because those are the feathers in the cap when it goes to grant, searching for grants and applying for grants. Those are the things that can help win your next grant round. So at the end of this session, you're going to get a checklist with all of these different items on it. So um, right now, just sit back and pay a little bit attention on what we're talking about and how we went about doing some of these things. And at the end, you'll get the checklist that shows you that, here's what we can divide up and give to people. So one of the first things that you need to do is with the state of Ohio is reserve with your state, and I did it with Ohio, let's do to reserve your name. You can't have a corporation name that is already taken. So in our case, we became Shawnee Hills Blooms LLC. Along with that, we took a look at our domain because we wanted to make sure that we had the domain to go with the name that we were selecting. So in addition to reserving with the state your corporate name, you want to take a look at the uh, domain engines to verify what names are available and secure those too. And I think ours was less than $19 when I did it. And uh, the secondary advantage of getting your securing your domain is not just for the website, but it also gives you the professional at Bloom's email address that to me is a lot better than xyz at gmail.com. In our case, it's shawneehillsblooms.org. And yeah, it's a long one, but as soon as you type it one time, it's in there for perpetuity, as they say. You're also then going to let's take a look at recruiting your directors. You're going to have to sit down with them and some are going to come easy. They're going to say, heck yes, I want to be a part of this. And others are going to go, well, I don't know, I'm kind of busy. So you just have to uh, lay out who you think is a good fit for what you want to do and get them recruited. This group of people will also then become your worker bees through the startup process. So back to a little bit of basics of I started asking, what is a charitable organization? I had to, Google search it because I wanted to make sure that what I was thinking was matching up with what the rest of the world thought about. And this is the general Google listing: relief of the poor and underprivileged, advancement of education or science, maintain public and I can't see that behind my name here. Lessen the burden on the government, eliminating prejudice and discrimination, combating community deterioration. We ended up at the bottom. You'll see what we chose to go with, and it'll become a little bit more obvious on the future slides here why this is important. Our focus, we wanted, from an educational standpoint, to list that as one of the key reasons why we exist. Our education series, we do an Arbor Day, we do seasonal seminars, we have outside speakers that come in and help us with different things that all get promoted and advertised to the village so that the village residents can come and learn something new. And on the charity side, we are lessening the burden for our local government. I think in our first year, we had over 1,000 man hours of volunteer work. That's 1,000 hours that the village didn't have to hire somebody to come out and do. We watered flower beds, we planted flower beds, we planted pots. We do all the normal things that villages want to do, but oftentimes don't have the manpower or the funds to accomplish those things. So for our case, lessening the government's burden was a key role for starting our Blooms organization. So you're going to have to incorporate your nonprofit, and it's not as daunting as you think. There, um, you're going to have to file and prepare your articles of incorporation. First is the legal step, incorporate within your state. It's an electronic filing, and it's relatively easy to do, especially if you've done the groundwork that we've already talked about here this afternoon. In Ohio, the filing fee was $99, and I had an attorney review it because I didn't want to come back in a year, 18 months, and say, "Oops, we didn't do that right." And the other thing, one of the biggest uh, red flags was do not file as an LLC. The IRS generally will not allow an LLC to become a 501c3, conflict of interest. So um, get yourself prepared and get your incorporation filed. You're gonna need to create and present your articles of incorporation, and that states that you're organized for charitable purposes. You'll have to have a statement in there that talks about no political activity. There's going to be a statement talks about your dissolution clause. If the organization falls apart and is no longer a viable entity, how is everything going to be handled? The the government requires that no none of the assets of a charitable organization can go to an individual. So part of the dissolution clause is helping to predetermine how is the debt going to be handled and how are the assets going to be handled. Who can they be forwarded on to, um, and, and just basically how are you going to close down the business? And you're going to have to include in your articles a conflict of interest policy. Sounds kind of simple, but it's something that we read through in our first one of our early board meetings, and it's things that it's common sense, but in today's world, you see a lot of people that aren't following common sense sometimes when it comes to conflict of interest. So be sure that you got to have that in there, or they won't accept your application. Creating your mission statement, it's one of the things you have to include in your article of incorporation as well as in your 501c3 uh, filings. So I started by taking a look at what American Bloom's mission statement was. And what we're doing in the local level isn't that much different. So we took theirs and just modified it a little bit. And so ours is at the bottom. And you'll see here that we specify that it's a charitable and educational purpose. That's something that is, you're going to be able to lean on those to whatever categories you select. You're going to lean on those from this point going forward. Then we list in our articles our mission here to how we're going to beautify and what we're doing with things. And the ultimate goal is to helping and make our place a more vibrant place to live, work, and play. I talked about 501c3 filing. When it comes to the IRS, they're pretty specific about what they want into a filing. And when you start looking into their requirements, there are actually two forms. They're both online, but there are two forms that can be used. We're going to talk today more about what we use, which was the one on the right, the 1023EZ, but it's good to know about both forms. The standard application, it's 26-page long form. As you might expect with a government entity, it is a government form. It's eligible, you're all eligible, all companies or all nonprofits would be eligible for using this form. It is longer and it is more complex. And the documents that it asks for, you have to include and upload when you submit the standard form 1023. So more documentation is required, and you have to include it in what you send to with the original application. The the fee, filing fee is $600, and the time that it takes, obviously, to put all this together and for them to reply to it, because they end up having to look at all the different supporting documents that you provide, it takes longer for them to process. Excuse me there. So on the streamlined application, you're going through the same processes, but the form itself is only 3 pages. It's for smaller organizations. I believe it's less than 50,000 in assets. You have to, though, pass before you can qualify for the 1023 EZ. There's a 34 question eligibility worksheet that you need to answer the questions for. And if you answer not correctly, but once you answer them all, if you're eligible, it'll tell you at the end that you can go ahead and use the 1023 EZ. The another side benefit is the filing fee is lower and the processing time is quicker. In Shawnee Hills Bloom's case, we were awarded our acknowledgement letter about 2 weeks after we filed, which most people I've talked to said is about 4 weeks faster than what their usual turnaround time is. So for the on next few steps here, we're going to continue to talk about the 1023 EZ application form. So these are some actual lines within the application, the online application. So the purpose clause there in their case, it's line 5, it's your mission statement. Line 6, this is the talking about that it's all for the corporation and there's no personal benefit. Again, that was part of the requirement that I indicated a few minutes ago. The dissolution clause, it's something that you have to have in order to qualify for their acceptance. And so where are those assets going to go? And you might think, well, what assets do we have? Keep in mind that if you buy pots, okay, there's some assets. If you have a checking account with funds in it, you're going to have that's an asset as well. So you do have them, and they will grow as your years pass along. So in the same application, that process you're going through, these are the things that we had to add into the form. So aiding Shawnee Hills by planting, watering, maintaining flower beds. It's a reciting part of our mission statement. There's the National Taxonomy of Exempted Entity Codes. It took me a day to figure out which one to use. I was so fearful that if I used the wrong one, they would cancel and not, they'd send it back saying inappropriate. Well, there's 645 of these different little codes. We used S99, which is a community improvement and capacity building. So again, if I'd hired an attorney to do all this or a firm that does this on a regular basis, maybe they could have engineered all these for me, but we were taking the low budget approach. Um, so, and the accepted purpose, they're going to ask you on the application, what is your charitable, what's your purposes that you've selected and you've indicated, lessening the burdens for the government and instructing the public on subject useful to individuals and beneficial to the community. Those are the things that we used. So to go back to an overall and big picture, some of the things that we're going to do, you need to do in this whole process is open a bank account. And it may not sound like much, but once you have your EIN number with the federal government, then you have what you need to open a bank account because you're going to have the need for fees to be paid, and it'd be nice to have those all coming out of the entity's bank account. If you're going to be doing direct mail, it may behoove you to file for a postal permit, nonprofit. And, you know, we found that we weren't going to be doing enough direct mail to warrant getting our own postal permit. We do some postcard mailings probably 2 or 3 times a year, but those end up costing us about $300 when we do it, and we're able to do it with a pre-sort first class designation by using a local printer and mail service that takes our files and sends out directly to our community. So we didn't go down the road of doing the postal permit. We did also we found insurance and got it set up early on in the process, right after we had the name and got incorporated. You don't think about it, but you as a board of director are subject to liability. I mean, yeah, you really are. So getting some liability insurance early on is really beneficial. Payroll taxes. Are you going to need to, do you have employees? If you have employees, you're going to have to deal with payroll taxes. In our case, we don't have any employees. Therefore, we don't have to deal with the payroll tax side of things. Um, Operational setup continuing here, setting up your email, uh, get that going. Are you going to do some email marketing? If you are, and I would suggest that you all do that, then looking at something like MailChimp might be very much worthwhile. Setting up an email program or using the nonprofit access to get some of these third-party email programs lets you do some direct email marketing to your fan base and to your vendors and your businesses in town. And it really sets up and helps make it easy for resending to all the unopens and help to get your word out there. Um, Operationally, are you going to be asking people to come join you and do things and planting days or uh, fall festival days, things like that? Take some time to research what sign up programs work for what you need to have done. We use Sign Up Genius. It does cost us a little bit each month, but it lets us track uh, people and know what we have coming up. It also makes it real easy next year when you're doing it again. If you have the same kinds of programs year after year, a lot of what the work has been done one time, and you can easily recopy what you did before or change some information and send it out again. And then nonprofit services. There are some folks, companies out there that help with setting up nonprofits. And we used one, they'll oftentimes offer 7-day free, cancel within 7 days, and you don't have to pay for their services. And I did that. We used one of them, and at the end of the before the 7 days was up, I canceled the service, but I used the knowledge that I got from their organization to help us get our 501(c)(3) set up. So on the continuing of the market of the setup of the organization is, go ahead and create your website or your social media profiles. These are things that you need to do, and you plan for them up front and make sure that somebody is on board to make those things happen. Utilize social media platforms. We're on Facebook. We don't yet have a website, but we found that Facebook is working for us. And part of our reluctance on the website is the ongoing maintenance and making sure that it's fresh. We've chosen not to do that because we're not confident that we can keep it fresh with the volunteer organization, the volunteers we have. So we've chosen to stay with Facebook for the time being. And we do utilize email marketing. it has with that between email marketing and sign up Genius, we're able to get the word out to our followers and um, get them links so that they can immediately sign up. We use the same for our education series so that we have an advance notice for how many people are coming to one of our education evenings. Um, it would be even possible to set up a Square account and use that if you want also in your email marketing and on your social media platform. So one of the things that Laura had asked at the very beginning was, okay, so what were some of the costs that uh, were associated with setting up and the business and getting the 501c3 started? And the attorney fees, that's going to vary. Um, in my case, it was about $1,500 for an attorney to review everything and help me with getting things ready to go, especially with the state filing on our registering the name of the business and getting all that taken care of. But the if it's if you're a government entity, you may have some attorneys on site, or you may be married to one. There's all kinds of ways to skin that cat. The state filing fees, from my research, it looks like those are going to range somewhere between $99 to a couple hundred. Uh, Something that just has to be done. And IRS filing fees, those range from these two numbers, either $275 or $60, $600 for the long form. The insurance, ours is currently running about less than $100 a year. That is until we tried to do an event where we wanted to serve alcohol and we had to go and sign. We applied for a temporary liquor license. The liability insurance along with that ended up being about $150 for the year. And we end up doing that for that instance. But since then, we haven't done an event with liquor again. So our insurance is back to under 100 per year. And you're going to have computer programs. You can choose to, if you, in my case, I came out of the business world. Microsoft products was what I was familiar with. There's a lot of other entities that, people that are coming out of education. So it might be Apple or Google that you're familiar with. So it doesn't, it's your personal preference, but decide what you're going to use and do it from the beginning so that you can all standardize and have a calendar and have things that everybody can see or utilize the software to make the organization run more smoothly. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the resources we used. SCORE, I mentioned earlier, it's a volunteer business mentor organization. And Jim Maltry was an individual, he's down in Cincinnati and had an actual how to start a 501c3 corporation webinar that I signed up for and took. And a lot of his suggestions are incorporated in this presentation. So it was a great overview and a big picture um, on what to do and what's involved. And it's, as you've heard me say, it's not just starting doing the 501. You also have to create the business, and there's a lot of thought that has to go into both of those processes. Small business services, as I mentioned earlier, Harbor Compliance was the entity that we used. There's others out there, and again, to take a look at what they have to offer. Google nonprofit services, and you'll see a list of folks come up and companies come up. See which one might work for you. And I still get emails from Harbor Compliance, even though I didn't uh, do a paid subscription with them. And if you're interested in seeing an example filing, all of these are public records. You can go to any state's Secretary of State's website and and call up, put in Blooms in business search and see who pops up. You can see what other entities are doing and have done. And we're a big organization that's trying to help everybody get better. So why not borrow from what other people have successfully been able to do? So this is the checklist, but don't worry about this. There's a form. These are going to be available at the end of the presentation for download. And so it's just strictly here for discussion purposes at the moment. But these are all the different things that I've compiled from harbor compliance. I've compiled from the state of Ohio Secretary of State, from the IRS government, and all the different things that had to be done at some point along the way. I tried to combine them here so that you can use this as a tool to help divvy it up amongst the directors and the volunteers that you have pulled together with your Blooms organization. So do your budget. And I haven't mentioned a budget yet, but you do need to have a budget. There are going to be people, asking for that. And prepare a 3-year financial forecast and a fundraising plan. A lot of questions if you're brand new, but if you've been in a Blooms organization for a while, all this is something you're currently doing, and it'll help you when you go to file the application for 501(c)(3). Check your name, reserve your domain name, recruit directors, create the mission statement. All these are things that it's going to take a couple of months to do this stuff, and that's okay. It's a process. Obtaining the EIN, that's from the IRS. That was a free online, but I needed to have my official entry, official name before I could do that. So, it's all things that just one more step of something that has to get done. You have to register with your state taxation department. Um, Benefits of ownership, workers' comp, the job and family services, unclaimed funds. These are all different aspects that uh, somewhere along the line somebody's going to ask or require that they be disclosed, or how are you going to handle. But there are things that you have to mentally get prepared for, and physically get prepared to, for that matter. Applying for state income tax. It doesn't just happen when you get the approval letter from the federal government, the IRS. You have to apply with the state to get your exemption with them. Um, you have to register with your attorney general. And then annually, you're going to end up having to file a 990 form or a 990N form, and and do that with the IRS on a regular, annual basis. So here's a checklist, and again, this is one that you'll get here shortly. Um, Annual checklist of what you don't forget to do these things, because it's real easy. May 15th. That's not been a date that was on my calendar of things to do. Um, April 15th, sure, but not May 15th. So get it put on your calendar. The Ohio Attorney General, they want a financial report. It's due the same time that the 990N is filed, and it's the same information. So, or some of the same information is going in both directions. Ohio, they require an unclaimed funds. They're looking for, if somebody made a donation and we, or given us money and we didn't do something with it, do we owe it back to them? That's what we have to file by the 1st of November, a, an accounting of, no, we don't have any unclaimed funds outstanding, and therefore we don't have to send them to you, the state of Ohio. Then the state of Ohio, they have a 5-year statement of continued existence. And we just have to say, yep, we're still in business. We're still doing what we set out to do. But it's something that you don't want to overlook, and you need to make a note of it, put it on your calendar, have it recurring every 5 years, and and someday your heirs will take care of it for you. So these are this is one of the reports that that is on at the end. A little bit more information on this one that helps to understand who can file for the 990N. It's entities under 50,000. Um, and then this is the downloadable check sheet. There's 2 pages here, and few of the descriptions on the far right to help you understand, because there's a lot of information that came at you right now, and to remember everything is going to be a very daunting situation. But I tried to put some notes on here so that you can remember, oh, that's why he said to do that. So there's 23 different little jobs that you've got to remember to take care of. And that wraps up what I had to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. That is really great. We do have one question while we're working through that question. If you have questions, please quickly put them in the Q&A section so we can throw those at Craig. All right, Craig, the first question, so far the only question, is are there garden clubs near you that are part of Ohio Garden Clubs / National Garden Clubs? And how are you different from them? And I may follow up with an answer.
I do not know. We do not. So Shawnee Hills is a half a square mile. We have 830 folks that live here. I'm sure there's there's clubs around, but we aren't involved with any of them, and they're not involved with us.
And I think I just want to follow up as I read that question. It made me think about, what is the difference, say, from a garden club that you might have in your community and what you've done in creating Shawnee Hills Blooms as its own nonprofit. And I think a garden club really focuses primarily on gardening and horticulture, floral design, that sort of thing. Whereas you are about improving the entire community experience.
Correct.
Garden clubs are member centered, where you're more community centered. Garden clubs pay dues. You are really volunteers and who may or may not be formal members, that sort of thing. So I think there is quite a difference of what a nonprofit is doing compared to perhaps more very specific local groups that you might have in your community. All right, we do have another question. Was there any discussion and debate about the address of the organization? What was considered? Address.
The physical address of our organization is that
Yeah.
what you're referring to?
You know what? I don't know. Hopefully, actually, let's see how we make this happen. Dr. Miller, could you please quickly in the Q&A be a little clearer in what you mean by the address of the organization? Craig, remind us, what's the population of Shawnee Hills?
830 to 850.
Okay, very good. Are you a growing community or seeing population shrink?
No, we are growing. We are growing. Won't be long before we're landlocked, but we're not there yet.
Okay. And you may have touched on this, but the lot was shared today. How many board of directors members do you have?
We have 3 board of directors, treasurer, secretary, and president.
Okay. And your role?
I'm the president.
Okay, very good. I'm stalling a little bit to get some clarification. There we go. The answer to, okay, I'm going to restate the question. Was there any discussion / debate about the physical mailing address of the organization? Was this considered?
It's my house. And part of the reason for making sure we have the insurance is there was really, in order to do a mailbox would have cost money. In order to do, and if we associated with the village addresses, that started to blur the lines between 2 separate entities. We didn't want to do that. So I just used my own address. And that way I'm also sure that when notifications come or that require the business response, that they're coming to the right place.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, we don't have any other questions. Craig, is there anything you want to add before we sign off?
If people have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I didn't include that in my slides, but it's Craig at shawneehillsblooms.org is my email address. Feel free to reach out. I would love to see more Blooms organizations become 501(c)(3)s and become more thriving organizations and communities.
We do have some more questions coming in, Craig. So we've given
Okay.
people a little bit of time. By the way, I have put Craig's email address in the chat section, as well as the two checklists that he referenced a few times. Those are also in the chat. You can download those handouts. All right. Kelly asks, how can we get the checklist? Kelly, please check the chats. You will see two documents there. Um, all right. Marvin, Dr. Miller has asked, was there discussion of a logo and was there a process to trademark that logo? He asks because when American Bloom was formed, we had a debate with the IRS of using the word America.
So we do have a logo, and the process was we worked with a graphic designer to come up with some 4, 5, 6 different design ideas. And from our first meetings, the board of directors and volunteers that attended those early meetings decided these are no, I don't like this. Yes, I do like this. And we ended up with a blended logo that the group agreed to. And we have not registered that logo, and that might be a good thing for me to do. Thank you for that suggestion.
Which is yet another process, more fees, but
Add that to the
yes.
checklist.
Yep, absolutely. Yes. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. So, with that, I am going to thank Craig so much. This was really outstanding. This is a topic we've been asked to do more education about. And so, very clear that Craig was going to be the one to ask about this because of he's clearly knows what he's doing. He's just a volunteer. And so, just like so many of you out there, you're volunteers and you want your community to be the best that it can be. So thank you, Craig. That was outstanding. We really appreciate you being with us today. We will
Pleasure.
have a recording of this webinar posted on the website later today, and it'll also be posted on the Facebook page. I do hope everybody's following us on Facebook. Our next webinar, it's a good one. It's on Tuesday, July 7th at 12 Eastern Time. It is called Parks Pay Off, the Many Ways Green Spaces Give Back. It will be presented by Kirsten Marks. She's Executive Director of the Centerville, Washington Park District here in Ohio. You can learn more about this and other webinars we offer by visiting our website at americaandbloom.org/webinars. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. Thanks, Craig, from Shawnee Hills. That was a wonderful presentation. Have a great day, everyone.